Hello everyone, bonjour tout le monde. Merci d'être avec nous aujourd'hui sur les territoires traditionnels des Mississauga, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, et Huron-Wendat. We are here today on the traditional territories of the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. We are incredibly thrilled to be here. I'm taking the people of Canada on a tour of this very special community of Toronto Centre. Today we're on Winchester, and we are surrounded by co-ops, Fieldstone, Bleecker. We're surrounded by a number of co-ops. This is a co-op community all around us, something that we used to invest a lot in and that we have not invested in very much for a very long time. I'm thrilled to have, especially to talk about affordable housing, the Green Party of Ontario leader, Mike Schreiner, notre chef du Parti Vert de l'Ontario, Mike Schreiner, parce que le Parti Vert de l'Ontario, ils ont créé un plan pour le logement abordable qui est crédible, qui est efficace, qui est ambitieux aussi. Today of all days, having Mike with me is particularly special because we are speaking about affordable housing. And the Green Party of Ontario, under Mike's leadership, has presented very recently an incredibly ambitious and doable plan that has gotten rave reviews. And we have been thinking a lot about how we would, as elected representatives, support each other in the work to bring affordable housing to everyone. Because first and foremost, we need to recognize that there is an affordable housing crisis in Canada. Il y a une crise de logement abordable au Canada. I understand that this morning, Mr. Trudeau announced the Liberals' plan for affordable housing. And I would say to that if anyone, any party fully understood the urgency of the affordable housing crisis in this country, then they would be planning to return to Ottawa as soon as possible to get urgent action done. In the last session of Parliament, our MPs, and particularly our MP Paul Manley from Nanaimo Ladysmith, led a request for an emergency debate on affordable housing, a motion recognizing the crisis in affordable housing. Letters to the minister requesting detailed urgent action on affordable housing. And so my question would be to Mr. Trudeau and the Liberals, why, if you understood the crisis and why, if you're introducing a plan today, did you not A, support any of those initiatives in the House when you had the opportunity in the last session? And B, why are we in this election? And I think I'm going to be asking that question every day. Why are we in this election instead of getting to the work at hand, instead of getting people the urgent help that they need, because they do need that help? We have recognized in our National Housing Strategy Act that housing is a fundamental right. Il y a un droit fondamental à l'accès à le logement abordable et on l'a reconnu dans notre stratégie nationale sur le logement. But despite that, and even before the pandemic hit, we had almost 2 million Canadians living in unsuitable, inadequate, or unaffordable housing, and almost 2.5 million more who experienced core housing needs in 2020. Here in this community of Toronto Centre, just around the corner in St. Jamestown, a quarter in the last census, a quarter of people were living in inadequate housing, and half were living in unaffordable housing. Ici à Toronto Centre, plus d'un quart de tous les résidents paient plus que 50% de leurs revenus sur le logement et sur l'électricité et l'eau. And this is one of the top 20 least affordable ridings in the entire country for rental housing. The median income is $39,000, while the average one bedroom costs $2,300. So you do the math and tell me how people are going to manage to make ends meet. Everyone is worried about housing. If you have a home, you may be worried about whether your children will ever be able to afford a decent place to live. If you are low income, you may be stuck in unsuitable housing because there is no affordable option for you. And so this is something that is a failure. It is something that has gotten worse. And we know that the situation has been exacerbated during the pandemic. And so it is no surprise to anyone who has been following the Green Party that of Canada and of Ontario, that we have made access to affordable housing a top priority for ourselves and for the people of Canada. First and foremost, we need to recognize that the problem exists, and we need to declare housing and homelessness as national emergencies and twin crises. And I say this again, pointing out that we called for this months ago, exactly in recognition. Il faut reconnaître et déclarer que nous sommes dans une crise nationale de logement abordable. We need to redefine what affordable housing means using a better and updated formula. We need to immediately appoint a person that is going to ensure that we get action within the infrastructure of the federal government by appointing the federal housing advocate as was envisaged in the National Housing Strategy Act. The reason that we should be back in Ottawa now, as opposed to on the election trail, is that people need urgent help now because we are in a pandemic. We know that there are renters, low-income renters in this community that are at risk of eviction at any time. We have heard from housing advocates that we can expect a wave of evictions when moratoriums are lifted. Alors maintenant, c'est le moment de créer une prestation d'urgence pour les locataires résidentiels de faible revenu. This is the time for us to be creating a retroactive residential tenant support benefit for those people to ensure that they have a place to live and that they don't have the specter of eviction hanging over their heads. We also need to make sure that we are strengthening our regulations in order to limit foreign investment and to end predatory practices in residential real estate. A house is a home. It is not a commodity. It is not there for speculation. It is there first and foremost to be a place that people should live. And then as we stand here in a co-op community, a beautiful co-op community, we need to recognize that it has been decades since the government has invested properly in social housing, not-for-profit housing, cooperative housing, community supportive housing. Nous n'avons pas fait les investissements nécessaires pour assurer l'accès au logement abordable, surtout le logement sans but lucratif et coopératif, et qui peut soutenir les gens qui ont besoin de ça. And so now is the time to do that, to enhance the housing benefit, to expand the rapid housing initiative, to build and acquire a minimum of 300,000 units of deeply affordable, non-market, co-op, nonprofit housing over the next decade, to refocus the core mandate of the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation towards supporting development of affordable, nonprofit, and cooperative housing. It's incredibly important to give people an alternative to having to buy a home. There have to be other ways for people to access housing. We need also to increase access for housing for people with disabilities. And certainly, if we are going to work hand in hand with our provincial partners, we should have a Minister of Housing overseeing the implementation of all of this. Alors, il faut avoir un plan ambitieux de réinvestissement dans le logement abordable et il faut créer un nouvel dossier d'un ministre de logement pour travailler avec les provinces d'une manière coopérative pour assurer que les investissements sont faits et qu'on collabore pour attaquer cette crise le plus tôt possible. And then finally, ensuring access to housing for Indigenous peoples. We continue to fail to be guided by First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Nation peoples in terms of developing inclusive and culturally appropriate urban Indigenous housing strategies. Indigenous leadership is ready to do just that, to lead the way. And so this is the time for us to not only work in collaboration, but to be led and to be guided by the associations who know what is needed and know how best to serve their own communities. This is just the beginning, and of course we will be presenting all of the details of all of the aspects here, but we have got to first start by recognizing that if we view this as a challenge, and we agree it is, and we've heard the Liberal Party, the NDP Party, the Conservative Party, our party, the Bloc, all say that this is a critical priority, then let's get to work. Let's get to work together cooperatively and collaboratively to do this as quickly as possible because it is that urgent. The Green Party stands ready to do that, both with the other national parties and also, of course, with our provincial counterparts. C'est le moment de reconnaître la crise. C'est le moment de mettre en œuvre, de mettre en marche des solutions efficaces et ambitieuses. C'est le moment de travailler ensemble d'une manière collaborative. C'est le moment de travailler avec nos partenaires provinciaux aussi. C'est le moment de dire que chaque personne au Canada a le droit à un logement sécure, un logement abordable, a place to live of their own. Now is the time for us to say once and for all, not only do we have a fundamental right to accessible, affordable, safe housing, but we also have the right to expect that our government and our political parties will do what it takes as soon as they can to make that a reality. And with that, I will pass it to Mike for his remarks. Over to you, Mike.
Merci. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Successive Liberal and conservative governments at both the provincial and federal levels, starting in the 1990s, got out of housing. And as a result, we've had an increasing housing affordability crisis building year over the last 3 decades. And it's now reached a breaking point. And that's exactly why I was so impressed with Annamie Paul's leadership when the Ontario Greens released our housing affordability strategy back in June. And within days, Annamie came to Guelph to commit to federal partnership and federal support. Because here's the bottom line. The housing affordability crisis is driven by a lack of supply. And it's going to be provincial and municipal governments who are going to have to remove the barriers to that supply shortage. But we need a federal government who is going to partner with us. We need a federal party that understands the importance of cooperation and collaboration across party lines and across jurisdictional lines. And that's exactly what an Annamie Paul Green Party is committed to doing. The Ontario Greens are committed over the next decade to building 100,000 affordable housing spaces driven by co-ops and nonprofit housing providers like where we are standing today. 60,000 permanent supportive housing spaces with wraparound mental health and addiction supports to end chronic homelessness. And finally, we need an Indigenous-led and Indigenous-owned housing spaces, and we're committing to 22,000 over the next decade to address Indigenous homelessness and housing affordability issues. And so I can tell you, I was knocking on doors last night with Annamie Paul right here in Toronto Centre, and the receptions at the doors were fantastic because they know she's a champion for this community. They know this community has been overlooked, especially when it comes to providing housing affordability for people, and that the people of Toronto Centre need Annamie's strong voice in Parliament. Canadians need Annamie's strong voice in Parliament. And that's why I'm so excited to be with her today to make sure that everyone in this country knows that the federal and provincial parties are working together to address the housing affordability crisis in this province and in this country. Merci, Megwitch.
Thank you so much, Mike. And yes, I mean, it was a pleasure visiting the community and showing you this wonderful community yesterday. The top question at the door was about housing and affordable housing for people in this community. And I encourage the media that's here, the cameras that are here, first to take a look at this community where people of various incomes are able to live in a beautiful, caring, supportive community in the center of the city. And remember that it's possible, that there was a time when we believed and knew that it was possible to build these kind of communities, and that it's time to start that again. And then after you've left this, so that you remember what is possible and what people in Canada can do when they are ambitious and determined and want to make sure that every person in their community is taken care of. Blocks
Recording
from
in
here
progress.
to St. Jamestown. Talk to the people in the park, in the community, and they'll tell you about the 6 or 7 people living in an apartment designed for 1 or 2 people. They'll talk to you about feeling trapped in their inadequate housing because they have nowhere else to go and nothing is affordable. And when you hear those stories, remember that this crisis has a human face, and that every day that goes by without strong, decisive action, like the action that that I've described and that Mike has described, is a day that someone goes without one of the things that is one of the most basic rights that every person in Canada should have. I hope that that will again push us all to action, and I hope that every single voter will choose to support parties that are committed to this, that have demonstrated that they are committed to this and committed to putting in the work. We welcome other parties and their newfound excitement about what we can do. But we do have to remember that they had time. They had a lot of time if they wanted to make this a priority. And it's not just elections that count. It's what you do in between them as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. Thank you, Mr. Schreiner. We are now going to go to questions online. We do have a question from Mr. Balagal. I'll get there in a second, Mr. Balagal. On va passer aux questions sur Zoom. Si vous avez une question, s'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction de lever la main. If you do have a question, please use the raised hand feature to let us know. All right, a question from Toronto Star, Alex Balagal for you, Ms. Paul. Go ahead, Alex, please.
Hi, thank you very much for taking our questions today. Just on the question of a green platform, I was looking at the last election. The Greens released a climate plan 5 months before election day. They released an 82-page total platform more than a month before election day. We haven't seen the same thing this time. I'm wondering if you can tell us where's the platform and why haven't we seen it yet?
First, let's remember that we are in different circumstances than 2019, when there were 4 years between that and the previous election. Let's remember that we were and continue to be in a pandemic as well. And then, of course, we have gone through a change of leadership just within the last 10 months. So I think that's the answer to your question about the timing. And then let's also remember that Greens are always talking about the climate. And when we talk about the climate, we do it in ways that are concrete. We provide always, whenever we are talking, it is never just about opposition. It is always about proposition, always about proposing the most innovative, doable, ambitious ideas on the climate. And so if you review the last 10 months, you will see that time and time again, we have made many proposals related to the climate. We have been speaking about a green recovery throughout the pandemic with a great deal of detail in terms of what the elements of a green recovery would look like. And so we will, of course, be releasing additional details throughout the campaign. But anyone who would like to know where we stand on the climate, what actions we think are completely critical. All they have to do is type in Green Party of Canada and climate, and they will see more than enough information. I guess I'll also mention that the last election was 2 years ago, and Greens have been saying for many, many years that we know what needs to be done. It's not new. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. The only thing that has been missing is political will and leadership to get it done. We will continue to say what we have been saying in the 2019 election and the 2015 election and on until we see the action or until the good people of Canada decide they want to elect more people who are ready to get it done.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up, Mr. Valengol, please?
Yes, please. So just if I understand what you're saying, like I'm looking at the Greens climate platform, you know, just Googling Greens climate, the targets from the last election, the proposals about retrofitting buildings, all those timelines. Are we to take your answer to mean that that's still the platform, that's the climate plan, still the 2019 climate plan will be the Greens climate plan going forward?
No, that's not what I said, Alex. What I said is that if you look at this month, last month, the month before that, and so on, you will see that we have always continued to propose the fundamental elements of our climate strategy. And of course, many of those elements are going to be virtually identical to 2 years ago because we haven't done them. We haven't seen the action, and as a result of that, our greenhouse gas emissions are up. We are the worst polluter amongst the G7. We are in the top 3 in the G20, and on it goes. And so the solutions, many of them, the overwhelming majority of them are the same. And these are not just our solutions. They are the ones proposed by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They are the ones proposed by industry. They are the ones proposed by climate activists. So you can expect to see us reminding the people of Canada about what those elements are, presenting them again, and there will always be innovation. There will be some exciting new things that we're proposing as well. And actually, I'm going to call Phil DeLuna up here. We have extraordinary candidates like Phil DeLuna, our candidate for Toronto St. Paul's, who has a PhD in material sciences and engineering, and is the youngest director ever of the National Research Council and is specialized in innovation and clean tech. So you can always expect, in addition to what we will continue to say are the fundamentals of a green plan, that we will be proposing the most innovative, exciting ideas to get us to net zero and net negative as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. Thank you, Alex. We have a question from Steve Pakin, please, from the agenda. Steve, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Good morning, Annamie. Good morning, Mike. Annamie, I wonder if you could tell me whether you can foresee any set of circumstances that would get you to revisit the decision to campaign exclusively in Toronto Centre during the campaign.
Thanks for the question, Steve. And just to clarify, I always said the bulk. The bulk of my time will be spent here, and it will be spent here. I certainly, as we're seeing today, the majority of Canadians would have preferred us not to be in an election. As I understand it, the most recent polling has something around 70% of people in Canada seeing this election for what it is, which is just a naked power grab from a party that wants all of the power at a time when we can ill afford to be in an election. So I would have preferred to be doing other things now. With the lifting of restrictions, I would have been able to do what I had not been able to do previously because of the restrictions, because of the pandemic, which is to travel widely. I was elected in the second wave of the pandemic, and since that second wave, we have had 2 more, and we're in one of them now. And so because of that, because even in this community, I haven't had the opportunity to visit people until recently, I have to spend time here earning the vote of the people that I want to represent. They have to be the top priority. That is the way that our system works. That being said, every day we do a press conference in a different part of this community, which serves as a perfect example, a perfect platform for the national issues that are on everyone's mind. Everyone is concerned about affordable housing. And here is an example of what affordable housing can look like when we put our minds to creating it. Everyone is concerned about the climate. And so we did our second press conference in an urban heat island where the temperatures are significantly higher than the surrounding communities, exactly because of the impact of climate change here in urban centers. So if I can find ways to physically support our candidates, then certainly I will. There are also virtual ways as well, but everything that I'm talking about are the issues that matter to their constituents and their community as well. And I know that they understand that I need to be focusing significant time in this riding.
Okay, appreciate that. My follow-up question is, you have standing two guys over from you, somebody who ran several times losing before finally winning. I presume at some point you asked Mike Schreiner, how do you win a riding that nobody thinks you can win? What did he tell you?
The first thing I want to do, in case anyone didn't hear, did you hear the question? Everyone hear it? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, I can only hear what's in my headphones. That is a great question, Steve. And the first thing I want to do is absolutely congratulate Mike for suiting up under this searing heat, you know, whatever it takes, right? Whatever it takes, that's what we're here to do. But Mike has been an incredible support. He has been a mentor. He has been a champion. I will be forever grateful to him for that. Everything that I think about when I think about what it means to be green and why I'm a green really is exemplified in Mike. And so it's just great to have him here today. It always puts a spring in my step. And Mike made that point. He said, you know, Annamie, those people that are telling you that Toronto Centre is unwinnable, these are the same people that were telling me that Guelph was absolutely unwinnable. I'd never win it. I took 20% in my election just before winning the riding, just preceding winning the riding. And people were saying, it can't be done, it won't be done. And he said, you know, I won. And until we do it, until you do it, you're going to keep hearing that. And I accept that. I know that the people in this community are ready for a change. In a 3-week campaign where we were able to do no canvassing, we had no office, I had no opportunity to meet people face to face. We had 3 weeks and we took a third of the vote. So I believe that they're ready to be daring. They're ready more than anything for the representation they deserve so that they can get the change they need on housing and other issues. And every time a Green runs, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a struggle. We have to put in the work. I'm ready to do that. We have been doing that. And I believe that we're going to have a result that is going to completely shake the establishment and prove that anything is possible. First, Mike, then me, then Phil. Let's go.
Green wave.
That's right.
Thank you, Steve. Ms. Paul, do you have time for one more question? Mr. Ballingall has another question for you, please.
I believe that we can suffer in the heat for one more question. Yes. Yeah.
Thanks. Go ahead, Alex, please.
Thanks very much. Appreciate you swinging back. I just want to make sure I understand exactly what you're saying about the platform. Like the policies, obviously you've been talking about policies the whole time through your leadership. You guys always talk about policies, but is there going to be an election platform document that you release? And if so, who is writing that platform document?
I'll answer the second part first. The Green Party is writing the Green Party's platform. I don't know, I feel like that part was, I hope I'm not bearing the lead there in any way. And then yes, we will be releasing a platform. Absolutely, we will be releasing a full platform. I really hope that that you and others who have been asking us about that are also asking the Liberals about theirs. They have not released a platform either. I know that in 2019 and 2015, all platforms also were not released right away. Different parties have different strategies in terms of how they want to release the planks of their platform. In our case, we've said from the beginning of this election that people are busy. People are distracted. People have other things on their mind. If you're out in BC and you've just been evacuated because of a forest fire evacuation order, you've got other things on your mind. If you're on the prairies and you're a farmer and you're experiencing the worst drought in living memory, and you're seeing your crops and your crops wither and your animals die, you've got other things on your mind. And if you're in this community, one of the hardest hit by the pandemic throughout, and you know that you're in a fourth wave, and you're worried about what that's going to mean for your community and sending your kids back to school and whatever, you've got other things on your mind. And so we're introducing things carefully and in a manner that is digestible, with the hopes that even with all of that, those not distractions, but those preoccupations, that people will be able to focus on the issue of the day. Today it's affordable housing, tomorrow it will be another, and it will all culminate, of course, in a full platform.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. There are no more questions on Zoom. Thank you very much. Merci à tout le monde.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much to Mike and to Phil for being with us, and for our interpreter as well. Just to point out again, and I hope that this is the beginning of a trend. We are the only party to consistently seek to have an interpreter with us for our press conferences. It's not always possible, but we do it almost all the time, and we're going to try to do it all the time. I hope that every single party is going to try to make their campaigns as accessible as possible. This is something that if we can do, certainly they can do as well. Thank you very much.